And that was at a hospital which has been running out of medicine. A group of activists from Puerto Rico arrive at the Salvador Allende Hospital in Havana, bringing gifts in the form of badly needed medical supplies. They say they brought what they could in suitcases. The donations include needles for injecting insulin, the insulin itself, antibiotics, prednisona for acute allergies, medicine for asthma as well, which this country has almost run out of. It is a heartwarming donation, there's no doubt about that. But no one has any illusion that this will do more than just make a tiny dent in the acute crisis this country is having in its health system. Since the Trump administration imposed a total fuel blockade on Cuba more than 3 months ago, an already dire economic situation has become desperate. Former UK Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn is also here to say that Cuba is not alone.
It is an obsession by Trump, there's no question about that. Every time he's asked a question, he then goes on saying, I will take Cuba. And as was pointed out earlier, in the way that Theodore Roosevelt took Panama, I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think the rest of the world will allow it.
Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel invited them to Havana's Convention Palace to thank them for their solidarity. But he also assured them that Cuba is preparing to defend itself against a possible U.S. attack.
When
the US invaded Venezuela using powerful bombs and state-of-the-art technology to kidnap President Maduro, they thought it would be simple. But 32 Cuban combatants defended him and fought to the death. What wouldn't millions of Cubans do to defend this country?
So it could be that
he's referring to President Trump's repeated threat to, quote, take over Cuba as soon as he's finished with Iran.
Taking Cuba.
It's uncertain how all this will play out, as Cuba's government continues offering what it calls a serious and responsible dialogue with the White House to resolve their differences. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Havana.
A strike on a hospital in Sudan's East Darfur state has killed at least 64 people and destroyed part of the facility. The World Health Organization says the Al Dain Teaching Hospital was targeted on Friday. It's not yet clear who carried out the strike. Government forces and the paramilitary RSF have both blamed each other. A gas explosion in the heart of Istanbul's old city has brought 2 buildings down. 9 people were caught under the rubble in the central Fateh district, which is home to historic sites like the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia. Emergency crews have been pulling people out of the debris. Officials say all of those trapped have now been rescued. When Cyclone Ditwa swept through Sri Lanka in November, it damaged tens of thousands of official documents. 4 months later, though, teams are still trying to salvage everything from birth certificates to land deeds. Manel Fernandez has this report from Colombo.
Restorers at Sri Lanka's National Archives are racing against time. They're trying to save tens of thousands of official documents damaged during Cyclone Ditwa late last year.
The pages are stuck to each other. We are separating them and inserting sheets of paper between the pages to absorb the water.
Samira Rasangani is part of this team of 20 restorers working on files from here, the Kandy Court Complex, one of the worst affected institutions. More than 15,000 active case files and 160,000 finalized case records were soaked. Judges, court staff and the military worked hard to clean the files before freezing them, the best way to stop mold from setting in. The Bebalagamas file is one of them. The government acquired the couple's property in Galagithara in central Sri Lanka as part of a highway project in 2017. After almost a decade, court proceedings were near completion and part payment of compensation had been approved. But everything is on hold until the original documents are available.
The case took so many years, and just when it's about to finish, there's more delay. We have been stuck in limbo, unable to finish building or buy a new property and move out, and now this.
Restoration is a slow and painstaking process. There are also dangers.
Documents damaged by floodwaters can be full of microbes like mold, which can't be seen. This can get into your body and make you sick, so there's a big risk when working on these files.
The team says it's determined to salvage as much as possible. Many people's lives are on hold as restorers work to save thousands of active court files, including land disputes, divorce and custody cases. Authorities say the disaster has highlighted the urgent need to conserve official documents. The United Nations and donors are helping with the challenging task.
I believe that this will set a stage for us to work more closely with public authorities in ensuring that they have a proper records management system, a disaster risk management system to deal with crises in the future.
The complex operation will likely take a long time to be completed, leaving those with active cases, like the Babylagamas, no choice but to wait and hope. Vinay Fernandez, Al Jazeera, Colombo.
All right, well, we're going to take a very short break. Do stay with us because the news continues here at the top of the hour.
As the war on Iran escalates, Al Jazeera correspondents are on the ground.
Donald Trump says he intends to speak to the Iranians in the next couple of days, but added he has no idea who will be on the other end of the call.
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead.
A lot of signs, people saying that the U.S. should not be attacking Iran, calling on Congress to act.
Members of Congress are away from Washington this weekend.
There needs to be the proof of an imminent threat to American interests.
This was our last best chance to strike.
The U.S. Senate has decided they are not going to step in and stop this ever-expanding war.
Stay with Al Jazeera for the latest developments.
In-depth analysis of the day's headlines.
Diplomacy, yet again, was used as a ruse for war.
Critical debate.
Who betrayed the table? Who attacked the negotiations for the second time? For the third time during the talks we should be attacked? Who is talking about a greater country for itself? Israel, not Iran.
Iran has been a huge supporter of terrorism over the years. I really have to take exception to the idea that Iran is innocent in this.
Inside Story on Al Jazeera. Investigating the use and abuse of power across the globe on Al Jazeera.
I'm Sara Khairat and this is Al Jazeera with our continuing coverage of the conflict between the US, Israel and Iran. Coming up, Iran says it will completely shut the Strait of Hormuz if the US attacks its power plants. And Tehran says that if that happens, power plants, desalination units and US economic interests in the region would be legitimate targets. Israel's Prime Minister pledges to, quote, destroy Iran after missile strikes injured more than 180 people. And Israel blows up bridges in southern Lebanon as it steps up its assault against Hezbollah. There are threats of further escalation in a high-stakes standoff between the US and Iran over the Strait of Hormuz. That's a key waterway that Tehran has been blocking for weeks. President Donald Trump issued an ultimatum on Saturday saying the US will, he said, obliterate Iran's power plants if it doesn't open the strait within 24 hours. Now, Iran says the strait isn't closed, but only those that are deemed as enemy ships are blocked from passing through. And it's also vowed a swift retaliation should Trump make good on his threat.
In reiteration of our previous warning, if any fuel or energy facilities in Iran are targeted, we will respond by targeting energy and technology institutions and desalination plants linked to America and the Zionist entity in the region.
On the ground, US and Israeli airstrikes are pounding communities across Iran. The Iranian Red Crescent shared these images that you're seeing there from the northwestern city of Tabriz. US-Israeli strikes have killed more than 1,400 people across the country. Ali Hashim reports from the capital, Tehran.
It's clear that the tone is confrontational and it's multi-layered when it comes to the different authorities and sectors within the state, military, diplomacy, politicians. So they're all within one framework, which is retaliating to American interests in the region and Israel when it comes to the targeting of Iran's power plants. This is what we heard from the military and their spokesperson, who actually posted a map showing several power plants and facilities across the Gulf and in Israel. Also, we heard from them saying that the Strait of Hormuz will continue to be closed till these power plants are repaired. The Speaker of the Parliament, Mohammed Bakr Kalibaf, a very influential politician and someone who is believed to be in the war room right now, also said that this is going to lead to retaliation, and later on he tweeted once again saying that this is going to also lead to retaliation towards American financial companies and whoever works with them. The foreign ministry, as you just read, Abbas Araghchi spoke about that the strait isn't closed actually, but it's the insurance companies who are hesitating because they fear the war of choice, as he said, and this strait is open to the friends of Iran. They are exploiting the leverage they have on the Hormuz Strait, and this is causing disruptions in the energy market, especially if there's also another strait closed like Bab el-Mandab. Whenever the Houthis enter the war, then there will be another choke point, and there will be another global crisis. So this is what they are relying on right now, plus the retaliation that they are vowing to do in case they are attacked in their power plants. So Iran is trying its best during this war to raise the price, put more pain on other parties in order to pressure the United States to stop this war.
All right, well, we have correspondents across the globe in Baghdad, Amman, Beirut, and also in Washington, D.C., and that's where Teresa Bow is live for us from there. Teresa, we're almost halfway through that deadline that Trump is self-imposing on Iran, and it seems his original plan to escort ships through the Hormuz sort of has gone away now, but now he's saying he'll obliterate Iran's energy or else.
Well, yes, and those are the messages that we've been seeing from the president, changing messages on social media. On Saturday, he said that he was going to obliterate power plants in Iran if it did not open the Strait of Hormuz. But on Friday, he has said it was time to start winding down. So certainly lots of mixed messages. But what is certain right now is that for the U.S. government, it is a priority to open up the Strait of Hormuz. It's not clear how. We've seen in the past week how Trump started pressuring European leaders mostly to help or create a coalition to open up the strait. Initially, that did not happen. The European Union has resisted in getting involved in this war, saying that mostly it's not its war. It's a war it did not start and did not endorse. However, last Thursday, we saw a communique from members of the European Union and Japan also saying that it's time to start thinking and planning to how to open up the strait. Also, there was a conversation this Sunday between the U.S. president and the UK, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, about the necessity to open the strait. So what's to do now? What is the U.S. government? And that's the big question. Iran has been using mines along the strait and also small boats attacking the vessels that belong to countries that are involved in any type or any way or are allies of those who are attacking Iran right now. So it's finding a way. What we do know is that the United States is increasing its military presence in the Middle East, sending 3 warships with 2,500 Marines. They're from a very specific unit. It's called the 11th Expeditionary Marine Unit that is involved in ground operations, high-risk operations at sea, among others. And there's some speculation that it could take part in this type of attacks on the Iranian coast. But of course, this is not certain. But what is certain is that opening the strait has become a priority, not just for the Trump administration, but also for the European Union. They say that the priority right now is to de-escalate the current war in order to be able to go in and find a solution. But that's something that until now the Trump administration has not considered.
All right, and stay with us there, Teresa, because the US Treasury Secretary has defended the decision to lift sanctions on stranded Iranian oil at sea for 30 days. Scott Bessent says it will allow Washington to limit Iran's oil profits.
About 140 million barrels are out on the water. In essence, we are jujitsuing the Iranians. We are using their own oil against them. We have a much better line of sight, to be clear, at Treasury when this oil goes to, if it goes to Indonesia, if it goes to Japan, if it goes to Korea, we have a much better line of sight and are able to block accounts that the oil goes into.
So, Teresa, the US Treasury Secretary, defending that decision to lift sanctions on Iran's oil. But is that likely to reassure Americans, do you think?
Well, that's a big question. And for now, they're not seeing any type of reactions on the street, not just about this latest measure, but the U.S. government has been taking other measures to try to bring down the price of oil, for example, using strategic reserves, also waiving some sanctions on Russian oils, among others. And right now, people on the streets, they are seeing the price for oil that has increased at least $1 just since this war started. And this is a huge concern, not just for because of the price of gas, the possibility of more inflation, small businesses that depend on the price of oil, among so many other things. And that's why the government is trying to find immediate solution, and it may take time. On that same interview we sent today, he said that it could take 30 days, 50 days, or 100 days, but there's going to be peace in the Middle East after this war. And that's the big question. Nobody really knows what is going to happen or when this war is going to end. And for the U.S. administration right now, bringing down the price of oil is political. I mean, there's midterm elections later this year. People here, when you talk to them, they say they are concerned about the war. They believe that bringing down the price of oil should be a priority for the current administration. And that is something that will also help them define who they will vote in the upcoming elections, the midterm elections later this year.
All right, thanks for that update. That's Teresa Bo from Washington, D.C. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the Iranian response to U.S. pressure over the flow of oil has been one of defiance. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says the Strait of Hormuz is not closed, but ships hesitate because insurers fear the war of choice the United States initiated, not Iran. He insists that freedom of navigation cannot exist without freedom of trade. Respect both or expect neither, he says. And joining us for more on this from Tehran is Abbas Aslani. Back again, thank you very much. A senior research fellow at the Center for Middle East Strategic Studies. So when we hear from Teresa there, looking forward, really, we have another day or so from when this Trump threat is supposed to end. How do you think Iran is taking that threat right now?
Sarah, Iran is considering and taking that seriously, but we are seeing no sign of, let's say, surrender or, let's say, weakness from the Iranian side. And on the contrary, what they are exhibiting is a shift in their operational posture. Iran is trying to not just fight for its survival, but also to turn this immediate threat into a long-term, let's say, strategic opportunity. So that's why it's unlikely for Tehran, in order to capitulate toward that ultimatum from American president. And some are saying that if it takes, Iran should pay the cost in case that the United States attacks part of the energy infrastructure in the country, in order to continue this fight till the moment that it's able to establish a strategic equation whereby its long-term security interests are guaranteed. What it means that Iran not only wants to stop this ongoing aggression, but also to make sure that there will be no further attacks in future. So that's why, any step back at the moment from Iranian side will be translated as a sign of weakness from the perspective of many here in Tehran, and the United States will come 10 steps ahead. So that's why Iran thinks that it should not, given to the ultimatum from the American president, and this might be, somehow signaling that there might be a new level of escalation as we speak, or the days to come, and this might also open new fronts in the ongoing war.
Yeah, and speaking on new fronts, in a message on Sunday, commander of Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, of course that's Iran's highest operational command, one of the majors announced a shift in the country's military strategy from a defensive posturing to an offensive one. How so?
Well, this indicates that Iran is not just in the reactive mode, but wants to be, take actions which somehow could change the course of the conflict. It is part of a multi-layered, let's say, battle, which is not limited to the military field, but also the economic aspect as well. And Iran, has been adopting an let's say, eye for an eye policies so far, but it thinks that this has not been that much, let's say, it has been effective to the extent, but in order to make it more effective, the country and the sources these days are saying that this time, if the infrastructure is targeted by the United States or Israel, they will try to somehow go beyond proportionate response and trying to somehow retaliate in stronger, let's say, intensity. This is aimed at, let's say, changing the calculus in the American side and trying to somehow make sure that the U.S. understands that if it takes any new escalatory move, the cost will be heavier this time. And the aim of this, let's say, change from the defensive mode to the offensive mode aims to somehow change this course of action. Many are saying that if Iran just is engaged in defending, this will be the same, and this will be somehow a Lebanon-style model that for now and then they will come and attack the country. In order to stop this cycle, they think that something needs to change, and that is Iran's, let's say, operational posture, which somehow it needs to be more offensive.
All right, thank you very much. That's Abbas Aslani in Tehran. Now, Israel is under another round of overnight Iranian missiles attacks. People are seeing scenes like this across the country. That's the scenes there that they're seeing. Interception efforts are underway. Falling shrapnel has been reported in several locations across southern and central Israel. Some communities have reported fires and damage. Well, earlier, Israeli police said an Iranian missile struck a kindergarten in Rishon LeZion, that's south of Tel Aviv, and it was closed at the time with no injuries. Overnight, though, on Saturday, strikes on two cities in southern Israel caused extensive damage. The incidents have raised questions over Israel's air defense systems.
In every event, even in successes, we investigate the entire chain of performance, from the detection to the interception, discover new things, do corrections, and adapt to the situation. The Air Force is managing a complex defensive battle. More than 90% of the launches fired at Israel are intercepted.
Let's go to Rog McBride live for us from the Jordanian capital, Amman. So we know there's been multiple shrapnel falling in different areas. Is there any damage at all?
Yeah, there have been reports that Israel has been experiencing intense missile activity incoming mainly from its believed Iran. There have been multiple alerts being issued mainly around the Jerusalem and central Israel areas, but also in the south. They seem to have been the target. The authorities there have been telling people to take shelter, reporting incoming Iranian missiles. There have been reports of explosions, and It's thought that some of the warheads have been these cluster type of munitions that distribute these smaller bomblets. So we are getting reports that at least 8 locations, mainly across central Israel, have been impacted by falling parts, falling debris or falling explosives. There is reports of damage. We're seeing that on social media. We're still trying to ascertain what casualties there might have been. Earlier, there were also alarms being issued right across a number of areas in northern Israel. They were later lifted. People were told it was safe to come out from shelters once more. But that really follows a pattern we have been seeing through Sunday, with multiple alerts being issued, especially affecting the north, because they are subjected not only to Iranian missile attacks, but also attacks from the north across the border, from Lebanon, from Hezbollah groups. So we had one 6-hour period on Sunday where there were 23 different alerts, and it does all add to this general sense of exhaustion amongst ordinary Israelis, who many of them have safe rooms in their homes, or they have access to shelters, are constantly having to go and take shelter. And there is a sense that the government had said right at the start of this conflict that as soon as possible they would start to drop some of these emergency measures and give a return to a sense of normalcy. But with this latest intensive exchanges, we are seeing that, for example, some of the school restrictions remain in place. Many schools are still closed. The restrictions on the numbers of people who can gather, that's also remains in place. And now we're hearing from the authorities that they are actually increasing the restrictions on the numbers of flights coming in and out of Ben Gurion International Airport and the numbers of passengers that can be on those flights.
Yeah, and just shifting now from Israel, of course, the Israeli army chief has said that the operation that it's carrying out against Hezbollah in Lebanon, that's the neighbouring country, has only begun.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think generally, despite this sense of war weariness, there is a feeling amongst most Israelis that this has to be done. They fear a nuclear-armed Iranian regime under the current regime there as an existential threat. Similarly, they believe that Hezbollah has to be taken on, has to be effectively defanged or disabled. So we are seeing intensive fighting back and forth across the Lebanese border. The Israeli military have been launching artillery and airstrikes into southern Lebanon. They've been continuing this campaign of destroying buildings and bridges that they say have been used by Hezbollah. And it all does seem to lead to a sense that they are preparing the ground for something much bigger. In response, Hezbollah has been targeting Israeli soldiers inside Lebanon and also in northern Israel. And the Israeli military has confirmed that during Sunday, 7 soldiers have been hurt, some of them wounded by a drone. But the Israeli military have confirmed that their offensive into Lebanon will continue, in spite of whatever happens with Iran in their combined efforts with their allies, the United States, against the Iranian regime. It does seem they have a separate agenda that they will still committed to following through, with many Israeli senior military officials going on Israeli media, I think preparing the Israeli public for a long, hard conflict ahead as they continue their fight with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like it might be a bit more long-term. Thanks very much, Rog McBride there in Amman. On the ground in Lebanon, airstrikes on the south of the country have killed at least 4 people on Sunday. Israeli forces have attacked the Qasimiya Bridge. That's a key crossing that links Lebanon south to the rest of the country. President Joseph Aoun has called the attack a prelude to ground invasion. Israeli forces said the bridges are being used by Hezbollah and that they need to be destroyed to prevent attacks on northern Israel. Well, Abaida Hito is live for us in Beirut. Abaida, Lebanese President Joseph Aoun saying that the attack on that bridge, I mean, of course, this is main infrastructure in the country, is a prelude to ground invasion. In what way is that?
Absolutely. Strong words of condemnation from the Lebanese president. He's saying that the Israeli forces are trying to cut the connection between the north and south of the country, describing it as a kind of collective punishment, a deliberate attempt to create a de facto buffer zone in the south of the country. But the Lebanese president says that it's going to make the humanitarian aid delivery to people south of the Litani River extremely difficult, and that the targeting of critical infrastructure, this civilian infrastructure like bridges, roads, there have also been 40 medical facilities targeted, over 24 paramedics and other emergency workers killed in these attacks. And the president is saying that the international community should condemn this along with Lebanon and intervene actually to prevent these kinds of attacks from happening, calling them possible violations of international humanitarian law. But what we're seeing is the Israeli forces expanding their operations significantly. There is a significant increase in the intensity of the fighting on the ground. In the Khiyam front, on the eastern side of the country, the fighting is now street to street in and around Khiyam between Hezbollah and the Israeli forces. In the center, south of the country, there are an increased number of airstrikes in the Nabatia region and Marja Ayoun. There is a significant uptick in attacks by Israeli forces. In the west of the country, the Naqoura front is also intensifying, with Israeli forces trying to actually cross the border and reach this very strategic area near the Mediterranean Sea. And with these threats from Israeli officials about the expansion of the operation in Lebanon, despite what happens in Iran, that's got things here definitely in a very high tense environment.
All right, thanks very much. Abeda Hito there in Beirut. Now, Iraqi authorities say 3 airstrikes have targeted an Iranian-aligned armed group in its stronghold south of Baghdad. The group is a former paramilitary coalition called Hashad al-Sha'bi, that's also known as Popular Mobilization Forces. Iraqi officials say the strikes came after an attack targeted a U.S. diplomatic and logistics center at Baghdad International Airport. Let's go live to the Iraqi capital, where Nicholas Huck is live for us. Nicholas, how are the Americans responding to the attacks on their facility exactly?
Well, to the attack, the drone attack, the U.S. used its air defense system called CIRAS, and it was used to intercept that drone. At the same time, they're evacuating from Victory Base. So there were NATO forces that were evacuated, and then American troops using planes that left the country. But this comes just hours after an Iran-backed militia group in Iraq declared or gave an ultimatum to the Americans: 5 more days to leave the American embassy, or else they will launch attacks against the U.S. embassy. And the difference with the Victory Base, which is on the outskirts of Baghdad, well, the U.S. embassy is in the heart of the Green Zone, in the heart of the city. And this has a profound effect for people here. They've lived through 5 years of relative stability after the war, and they are seeing this war come onto them, a war that they did not ask for. And so there's a sense of uncertainty among Iraqis. And earlier today, the Iraqi Prime Minister visited the headquarters of the intelligence headquarters, where there was a strike upon the building that left 1 person dead. And he was there to assess the situation, but also reassure and unite the people around this war, and to reassure them that they'll do all they can to ensure that there are as little attacks as possible. But the Iran-backed militia says they will continue to target U.S. positions in Iraq. Meanwhile, the Americans continue to launch airstrikes against these Iran-backed militias. One that happened just early on today, south of Baghdad, north of Babylon. Sarah?
All right, thanks very much. Nicholas Huck there with the update from Baghdad in Iraq. All right, let's Let's take a look at some of the other news. Israeli settlers have attacked several Palestinian villages in the north of occupied West Bank. Homes and vehicles were set on fire in villages near Jenin and Nablus. There are reports of several injuries from the attacks. The Israeli military says it sent troops to respond to what it called extremist settlers, but Palestinians say such investigations almost never are brought to justice. Now, 3 Palestinians were killed after an Israeli airstrike targeted Al-Nusayrat refugee camp that's in central Gaza. In a separate strike on Sunday, 3 others were injured in an attack on a residential building in Gaza City. Israel has continued to bomb Gaza. That's despite a US-brokered ceasefire back in October. More than 600 Palestinians have been killed since then. Leftist candidates have performed well in France's municipal elections. Socialist Party candidate Emmanuel Grégoire has won the race for Paris mayor. Exit polls also indicate that Marseille's left-wing mayor Benoît Payan defeated his far-right rival Franck Alicio. These polls are being seen as a litmus test for next year's presidential election. Cuba has restored power to nearly half of the capital, Havana. That's less than 24 hours after the national grid collapsed for the second time in a week. The country's aging energy grid is under growing strain, and that's because of a US-imposed oil blockade. The blackouts have left many people struggling to get basic supplies, and that includes food and water. A gas explosion in the heart of Istanbul's old city has brought down 2 buildings. 9 people were caught under the rubble in the central Fatih district, which is home to historic sites like the Blue Mosque and Hagia Sophia. Emergency crews have been pulling people out from the debris. Officials say that all of those trapped have now been rescued. Right, well, Inside Story is next, looking at Iran's future after, of course, many of its top leaders have been assassinated. We will be back with our special coverage of the conflict in a little over, 30 minutes from now. Do stay with us. Mohammed Jamjoon will be with you next.
The latest news as it breaks.
The war has even split Trump's MAGA base, with some of his hardcore supporters saying he's gone from America first to Israel first.
With detailed coverage.
The Sri Lankan Navy have been working in the seas to try and recover as many survivors and bodies.
From around the world.
Bangladesh's new government may soon be facing serious economic challenges caused by a distant war.
That would precipitate an attack against American forces.
To prevent Iran from getting nukes.
There is no coherent strategy, and you can see that's reflected in the media coverage.
Many American media see it like a video game. From the graphics on the screen to who they speak to, war for them is big business.
We saw this exact same pattern happen in Gaza. The same lazy, flattened reporting that we saw in Gaza when it comes to the war on Iran.
The Listening Post decodes the media on Al Jazeera.
Who's left running Iran? Much of the top leadership has been assassinated, but the country is still fighting. How's it been able to withstand such blows, and can the Iranian government survive this war? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm James Bays. Many of Tehran's top leaders have been killed, from the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei to senior security figures assassinated by the US and Israel. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu have framed the killings as victories in their war on Iran, but Iran says its governance structure is built to withstand such blows, and that means the loss of any individual shouldn't cause the downfall of the whole system. But how does this unique leadership structure work? Who's keeping the government running, and how? And what's it mean for the ongoing war? We'll put those questions to our guests when they join us in a moment. That's after this report from Imogen Kimber.
3 senior Iranian officials killed in Israeli airstrikes in 1 week. Security Chief Ali Larijani, Basij Internal Security Unit Commander Gholam Reza Soleimani, and Intelligence Minister Ismail Khattab. Those killings come after the US and Israel assassinated Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, on the first day of the war. Khamenei's close advisor, Ali Shamkhani, and Defense Minister Aziz Nasir-Zadeh were also killed on February 28th. There's no one left to negotiate, says the US president.
Their leaders are all gone. The next set of leaders are all gone. And the next set of leaders are mostly gone. And now nobody wants to be a leader over there anymore. We're having a hard time. We want to talk to them, and there's nobody to talk to. We have nobody to talk to. And you know what? We like it that way.
But Tehran says it can and will fight on. Iran's leadership and government structure is complex. Each key position reportedly has several replacements ready. But most importantly, the structure of governance and Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps uses what's called a mosaic defense structure. It's decentralized. Not all leaders and commanders are based in Tehran, but spread across Iran and able to function independently. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says this is why bombing Tehran does not impact the country's ability to fight, and neither do the assassinations.
I do not know why the Americans and the Israelis still have not understood this point. The Islamic Republic of Iran has a strong political structure with established political, economic, and social institutions. The presence or absence of a single individual does not affect this structure.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been replaced by his son, Mojtaba Khamenei. People have not come out to protest against the government in large numbers, as the US had hoped. Many have been rallying against the US and Israel, although it is reported that government crackdowns on dissent is strong. So Iran says it will not surrender, and that it remains strong enough to fight on. Imogen Kimber, Al Jazeera for Inside Story.
Well, let's bring in our panel of guests who are going to discuss all of this on today's Inside Story. And in Tehran, Hamid Reza Ghulamzadeh, director of House of Diplomacy, a think tank. In Geneva, Ali Vaez, director of the Iran Project at the International Crisis Group. And in London, Tim Ripley, defence analyst and editor of Defence Eye. Can I start with you, Hamid Reza, there in Tehran? You have had many of your leaders killed right at the beginning of this war. There's been a policy by Israel particularly, but also of the US, of assassination and decapitation. Over 40 top officials and commanders have been killed. Who is running things in Tehran?
Thank you very much for having me. If you look at Iran, the way the Americans and Israelis look at it and call it a regime, then it would be dependent on the people and figures. But if you look at it as a country, which is and a normal country working just like any other country, it is structure-based. So the system and the structure of the power is working. And for Iran, that's the story. Every official has its own position. And after the 12-day war last June, it was ordered to all the officials, either politicians or the armed forces, to appoint at least 3 substitutions for themselves. So at least 3 people or up to 5 people are clear to be in the chain of command for each position. So with that, even if the people are removed, the system would work very smoothly and very correctly as it has been supposed to do.
But who? But who, Hamid Reza? Hamid Reza, who is an overall charge? Because it's supposed to be the new supreme leader, the son of the previous supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. But no one has seen him. It's 2 weeks since he took control, supposedly. He's not been seen when he got the job. He's not been seen. It's a very important time in Iran. It's Eid and it's also Nowruz, the Persian New Year. He's not been seen. Where is he? Is he even alive? Some are asking.
So a commander-in-chief doesn't rule by being seen. He rules by giving orders, and he is doing the job by whatever it needs to do. And with the assassination that began with the assassination of the supreme leader, the previous supreme leader, everyone is demanding top officials not to appear in the public in order to prevent any sort of assassination. So we just lost a Minister of Intelligence, Khatib, a spokesperson of the IRGC, Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, Ali Larijani, and many people have been assassinated in recent days. So in order to prevent that, even the public are publicly demanding the officials not to appear. Even when, for example, for the Eid prayers the other day, people came, actually, some of the officials appeared in the public prayer. Many people actually asked them not to do that. They criticized why they appear in the public. Because people have this understanding that they need to command their jobs and they need to carry out their duties, and it doesn't need to be in the public. So people have understood that, and they don't need to come to the public to be in one way or the other traced by the Americans or Israelis. So that's the way he is right now controlling the government as the top leader. He is in touch with the commanders and with the politicians, and they are doing their job. Everything is working, actually, here in the country.
Let me bring in Ali Vaez. Yes, there is this policy of decentralization, and we'll come into that in more detail in our discussion. But for any country to lose this number of leaders, to lose the supreme leader who'd been in charge for so long, and some might say Ali Larijani, who obviously was not the supreme leader, but a very important security official, in some ways, in terms of the organisation of the country, was perhaps more important.
Well, James, this just shows you how resilient the Islamic Republic is. It is a regime that is very entrenched and is also very deeply benched. I think one problem that US and Israel have is that they end up believing their own rhetoric that they're dealing with a foreign terrorist organization here, whereas in fact, this is a state. And it has layers and layers of people who can step in and take over positions. Now, when it gets to the supreme leader, I am of the view that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader who was assassinated, was the last supreme leader of Iran. His son, even if he is alive, owes everything he has, his position, to the Revolutionary Guards. If this system survives, if the country survives this war, it will be thanks to the Revolutionary Guards, and so they would be at the pinnacle of power, and they are the ones who are calling the shots.
Do you think, now, Ali, it's possible that he's not alive? Do you think that that is a gambit that could be played by this government? There's no way the Israelis and the US can target a man who's not actually alive, of course.
We can't rule anything out because there hasn't been any sign of life. We have seen 2 statements from him read by somebody else, but we have not seen any image or any audio that indicates that he is indeed alive. I understand that for security reasons, he should probably not take any risks, but again, we don't have any evidence to point to the contrary. The final point I'll make is that people like Ali Larijani, the National Security Advisor who was killed just a few days ago, we're really stepping in to fill the vacuum and run the country. And that power, I think, has now gravitated towards the Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who's also a former commander of the Revolutionary Guards. And if even he is eliminated, I'm sure that there will be other people who would be able to step in and prevent the system from imploding.
Tim, we heard Hamid Reza say he doesn't need to appear in order to run things from behind the scenes. But normally, you'd expect in a country that is facing the challenges and the bombardment that Iran is facing, a leader to appear, or his voice at least to appear, to rally the people at such a difficult time, would you not?
It's a very obvious point, but remember, this country is under direct attack and its leaders are a prime target. So it's obvious they would try to make very drastic security precautions to prevent themselves being targeted and located by the Israelis and the Americans. I mean, we've heard lots of sort of stories about how the Americans and Mossad are tracking Iranian leaders through the traffic cameras or the mobile phone systems. All those electronic footprints could lead to the Americans and the Israelis towards these figures. So trying to cut themselves off and trying to hide is an obvious thing to do at this moment in time, because the strategy of Iran is to survive. At the end of it, if they have a political leadership that can stand up and say, we are running the country, they can claim victory. So in the duel between the Americans, the Israelis, and the Iranian government, surviving must be a #1 priority for the Iranian state. And to do extreme measures to protect itself has to be an obvious thing to do.
Hamid Reza, clearly the intelligence in Iran was compromised for them to be able to target so many leaders. But do you think going forward, as the commands transfer to a different level, it's going to be harder for the CIA and Mossad? They clearly had built up a good intelligence picture on the leaders, but as it transfers to the second in command or the third in command, might be much harder for them then.
As it moves on forward, it would be more difficult for the Americans and Israelis to target the officials. The security and the considerations would be stronger here in Iran. And on the other side, they are the figures are more unknown to the Americans, so they cannot easily find out who is replacing who and who is doing the things. And it would be more difficult to find out about them and then find intelligence and then target them. So every layer that we go on, it would be more difficult for them, and it would be better for Iran. That's why one of the reasons that it is said that time is in favor of Iran, and as we go on in time, it would be better for Iran and more damaging to the Israelis and the Americans, because they have lost, they have already actually run out of bank of targets. They have run out of bank of officials as targets. And then it would be just going to destroy the infrastructure or the civilians and houses to be attacked. Actually, for the past couple of days, everything that has been attacked in Tehran were residential buildings, just people who are retired people. At least 2 or 3 people I know were just retired people without any connection to the IRGC, to the military, to the government, nothing. So they're just killing civilians in order to make people frightened. That's all that the Americans are doing right now. And if they go, as President Trump has threatened, to go for the infrastructure, then it would be something like what happened in South Pars and in Qatar in the attacks about the oil infrastructure. So when we are moving on, when the time passes, it would be more difficult for them and easier actually for the Iranian side to make better targets in the fight.
Tim, I mean, if we look at what President Trump said, and I know when you look at his aims and what he wanted to do with this war, some of it's very contradictory, and he said so much. But one of the things he said was he wanted a Venezuela model, that perhaps he could get someone who could take over the country with all of its structures intact. He wanted an Iranian version of the Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez. They've made that impossible, have they not, with this continual tactic of assassinating leaders?
President Trump has famously said, you know, we're running out of people to talk to. I mean, that's one of his quotes that he's come out with. I bow to the expertise of my 2 colleagues here on Iranian politics, but I would sort of imagine that Iran has a deeper, and its leadership has a deeper ideological motivation than the Venezuelans or other countries where Trump has intervened in the past. And this is a very different society, a different political culture, a different political leadership, and a different scenario. So, I mean, lots of commentary about how President Trump has bitten off more than he's chewing this war, and certainly American understanding of how the Iranian leadership works, it's been found wanting.
Ali, let's talk about Iran's military strategy here, and we'll get to that policy of decentralization. I mean, Iran has relied in the past on its axis, on its proxies. They have been degraded. It seems the things they're relying on now are their missiles and this policy of decentralization and fighting an asymmetric war, not fighting the US at its own game, but basically